No one can deny that Lake Michigan is a stunning destination when summer arrives. The lakeside towns, the bustling marinas, and the golden sunsets shimmering across the water have become cherished summer memories for millions. But beneath that seemingly tranquil beauty, the lake has always harbored terrible secrets. Because of its elongated shape and uninterrupted shoreline, Lake Michigan frequently experiences strange, unpredictable currents. When strong winds sweep across from the west, they can generate violent waves capable of pulling anyone standing on the shore straight into the depths. And then there's the water temperature. Even in the height of July or August, the lake remains far colder than the southern seas. At around 62 degrees Fahrenheit, it might sound refreshing. But under the wrong conditions, that's cold enough to induce hypothermia in less than an hour. Yet what unsettles people most isn't just the natural hazards. It's the disappearances. If it were only a matter of dangerous currents and cold water, perhaps the stories would have explanations. But throughout the history of this lake, far too many vanishings have left behind no trace at all. Boats that simply disappeared without a call for help. Pilots who never landed. Even captains who stepped into locked rooms and never came out again. So, is Lake Michigan hiding something far more sinister than we realize? Let's find out in today's video. So fasten your seatbelt as we dive into today's mystery. But first, you'll have incredible luck if you like and subscribe before this video ends. Part 1. When even nature sets its own traps. It's no coincidence that Lake Michigan has often been called America's inland sea. Spanning over 300 miles in length and reaching depths close to 1,000 feet, its calm surface can easily lull anyone into a false sense of safety. But much like the ocean, this body of water does not obey predictable rules. The geography of Lake Michigan, with long, uninterrupted shorelines running north to south, might seem like a natural gift, a perfect backdrop of scenic beauty. Yet it is precisely this symmetry that gives rise to a phenomenon known as a longshore current, a powerful, narrow flow of water that pulls outward from the shore, silently dragging everything in its path away from land. Those caught in it often don't realize what's happening until they've already been carried dozens of meters out into the lake, with no clear understanding of how they got there. And when that hidden current combines with strong westerly winds, a second danger emerges. Sudden, irregular waves begin to form. These waves aren't necessarily towering, but they are uniquely hazardous. A person standing in knee-deep water can be knocked off balance and swept away in a matter of seconds. For anyone who believes they can resist or swim directly against the pull to reach the shore, this is often a fatal mistake. The current doesn't need to overpower you. It only needs to outlast you. And with water temperatures ranging from 50 to 65 degrees Fahrenheit, exhaustion sets in quickly as the body's core temperature drops. Before long, the swimmer quietly vanishes beneath the surface, as if nothing ever happened. Many who grew up along the shores of Lake Michigan carry whispered stories of a cousin, a former classmate, or a passing tourist, someone who swam too far and never returned. And it's because of these tales that drownings here are often dismissed as simple accidents. But if that were all, the growing list of strange disappearances, ghostly unmanned wrecks, and increasingly alarming summer statistics wouldn't leave behind such a deep sense of unease. Part 2. The Michigan Triangle. Legend or a warning written in history. Where too many questions remain unanswered, people begin to construct theories. And when disappearances continue to occur, one cannot help but wonder, could something else be happening beneath the surface of Lake Michigan? For decades, fishermen who've spent their lives on these waters have whispered about a particular area, an unnatural region on the vast expanse of the lake. It's a triangular zone stretching from Manitowoc, Wisconsin, to Ludington, and then angling down to Benton Harbor, Michigan. Within this area, an astonishing number of disappearances, collisions, and unexplained accidents have taken place. People call it the Michigan Triangle. Skeptics are quick to claim that this is nothing more than a statistical coincidence. If you were to draw a triangle anywhere with heavy maritime traffic, they say, accidents would inevitably fall within that space. But is that truly all there is to it? Because within this so-called triangle, the incidents go beyond mere shipwrecks or aircraft crashes. There are stories of entire crews vanishing without a trace, leaving behind ghost ships adrift and unmanned. There have been disappearances that occurred under ideal weather conditions, with no warning signs recorded beforehand. And there are even cases where captains disappeared behind locked doors, sealed from the inside, as if they had never been there at all. Some independent researchers have compared the frequency of strange events in this region to those within the Bermuda Triangle, some even claiming the Michigan Triangle holds a higher anomaly rate proportionate to its surface area. So what creates this triangle? Could it be irregular magnetic fields? Powerful underwater vortexes hidden deep beneath the surface? Or is it something else entirely? Something that exists beyond the limits of modern science? Of course, no one has a definitive answer. But for those who live near the lake, especially the veteran fishermen, there is one piece of advice that's often passed down, simple yet haunting. In those waters, nothing should ever be considered normal. Part 3. Roosevelt. The ship that never came back. Some ships are born to weather storms. Some endure for so long that people come to believe they are unsinkable. And then, there are ships like the Roosevelt. Launched in 1863, during the golden age of two-masted wooden schooners, the Roosevelt was once a vital thread in the commercial lifeline across Lake Michigan. For nearly 6 decades, the vessel endured countless tempests and more than a few collisions, some so severe that its survival defied belief. Over time, people stopped calling it just a ship. It became a symbol of resilience. And perhaps that is why the tragedy that eventually befell the Roosevelt was all the more difficult for people to accept. October 1921. The Roosevelt was preparing for what would be its final run of the autumn season, transporting a load of potatoes and valuable maple wood from High Island to Benton Harbor. It wasn't a long journey, and the weather that morning was reported to be calm and pleasant. But something strange happened before the ship even left the dock. Its longtime helmsman, Brother Ed Johnson, abruptly refused to board. He said only that he had a very bad feeling and that he couldn't ignore it. His words unsettled the rest of the crew. But eventually, a replacement captain, Earhart Gleesa, was hired from the mainland, and the Roosevelt set sail as planned. A few days later, on Halloween, the ferry Ann Arbor No. 4 happened upon the overturned hull of the Roosevelt, drifting roughly 15 miles offshore. The stern had been severely damaged, and not a single person remained on board. At first, it seemed like a simple collision. Perhaps the Roosevelt had been struck by a larger vessel in the fog, and its crew had been rescued. But no other ship ever reported a crash. A tugboat, the Cumberland, was dispatched to retrieve the Roosevelt. But as it approached the wreck, a sudden and violent storm broke out, so intense that the Cumberland was forced to retreat. When conditions improved, they returned and towed the wreck to Racine for inspection. And that's where the theories began to unravel. The Coast Guard concluded that the damage may not have come from a collision at all. But if it wasn't a crash, then what was it? An explosion? An onboard accident? Or something else? Something never documented? No one knew exactly how many people had been on board. Record keeping by the cooperative that owned the Roosevelt at the time was notoriously sparse. Estimates ranged from 9 to 28 individuals, and to this day, not a single one has ever been found. The story of the Roosevelt never received a proper ending. It lingers, unresolved, like a strange, lingering silence from the depths of Lake Michigan itself. Part 4. Le Griffon, the pioneer ship and the first Great Lakes mystery. In the late 17th century, when North America was still little more than a vague frontier in the eyes of Europe, a Frenchman named René Robert Cavelier, Sieur de La Salle, began his journey through waters yet to be named. With a vision of building a commercial empire through inland waterways, La Salle knew that traditional canoes were far too small to carry the weight of an emerging economy. And so, in 1679, he commissioned the construction of a vessel unlike anything the Great Lakes had ever seen, Le Griffon. According to many records, Le Griffon weighed roughly 45 tons, carried 1 or 2 masts, and was outfitted with 7 cannons. Its appearance echoed the power and prestige of miniature European warships. More than a mode of transport, it was a floating symbol of French strength and ambition in the New World. On August 7th of that year, after months of delay due to material shortages and conflict with native tribes, Le Griffon was finally launched at the mouth of the Niagara River. From there, it began its voyage westward, navigating through Lakes Erie and Huron before pushing deeper into unknown waters. By mid-September, Le Griffon had docked at a small island off the coast of what is now Green Bay, today known as Washington Island. There, LaSalle was warmly received by the Potawatomi tribe, who had known him from earlier expeditions. Trade was brisk and cordial. Valuable pelts exchanged for tools, weapons, beads, and European clothing. The cargo hold soon overflowed with furs. And on September 18, 1679, Le Griffon departed the island, setting sail eastward. LaSalle remained behind, planning to continue his explorations by land, while the six-man crew sailed the vessel home, carrying with them the promise of a triumphant journey. But Le Griffon never arrived. The largest ship to have ever crossed Lake Michigan at the time had vanished, completely and without a trace, just days after setting out. And so, the theories began to take root. Some believed a sudden, violent storm had swallowed the vessel whole. According to a few accounts, tribal elders from the Potawatomi had warned that the winds would soon shift, but the crew, it seemed, had paid no mind. If that was true, Le Griffon may have been claimed by the very stillness of Lake Michigan's waters. Others speculated that the ship was ambushed by a rival tribe. And then, there were the more skeptical voices, those who believed the crew had deliberately scuttled the vessel, stolen the pelts, and disappeared into the wilderness to pursue their own fortunes. Whatever the theory, one thing remains unchanged. The wreck of Le Griffon has never been found. And despite centuries of searching, no confirmed archaeological discovery has ever been linked to the vessel. Le Griffon, the first great ship of the Great Lakes, remains lost, its fate buried somewhere beneath time, water, and mystery. Part 5. George Donner, the man who closed the door and never came out. In April of 1937, as much of the Great Lakes region was still recovering from an especially brutal winter, Captain George R. Donner, a seasoned mariner of 58, was steering the freighter O.S. McFarland through the last of the season's ice. The ship was carrying nearly 10,000 tons of coal, bound from Erie, Pennsylvania to Port Washington, Wisconsin. The journey was far from easy. Much of northern Lake Huron and its straits remained choked with drifting ice. For days on end, Donner rarely left the wheelhouse. He slept little, ate less, and kept his eyes fixed on the narrow passages of open water between the breaking ice floes. His crew noted that he looked exhausted, but still focused, still sharp. Finally, after navigating through the Mackinac Straits and entering the calmer waters of southern Lake Michigan, the lake fell silent. The ice had vanished, the skies cleared, and the ship drifted quietly under the waning light of day. It was Captain Donner's birthday. Roughly 3 hours before they were scheduled to dock, Donner left the wheelhouse, handed over command to his first mate, and said, "Call me when we're near port." He then stepped into his cabin, shut the door behind him, and was never seen again. Less than an hour from the harbor, the first mate followed his instructions and knocked on the captain's door. No response. Concerned, he tried the handle, but the door was locked from the inside. Worry turned quickly to alarm. They forced the door open, and when it swung wide, what they found was nothing. The room was completely empty. There were no signs of a struggle. The only window was a small, round ventilation porthole, far too narrow for any adult to fit through. The entire vessel was searched immediately afterward. Every compartment, every storage bay, the engine room, the coal bunkers, every shadowed corner of the ship was turned inside out. But there was no sign of him. Authorities were alerted without delay. An emergency broadcast went out to all ships in the vicinity. Search teams were mobilized. But no trace of George Donner was ever found, as if he had simply vanished from the world without leaving a single mark behind. For years afterward, the story was told and retold as one of Lake Michigan's most enduring mysteries, because it hadn't happened during a storm or amid confusion, but rather under the calmest conditions, with the clearest skies, and aboard a ship that was supposed to be completely safe. Part 6. Other disappearances and the dark shadow known as the Michigan Triangle. For those who have lived near Lake Michigan long enough, they'll tell you that this place moves to its own rhythm. Brief summers, endless winters, and a quiet, reverent relationship with the vast body of water stretching beyond their front porches. Because despite satellites, radars, and complete nautical maps, there are still things that happen out on the lake, things no one can explain. Stories like the Roosevelt, Le Griffon, and Captain Donner's vanishing are only the more well-known entries in a much longer list of mysterious disappearances. And when people began to connect the locations, Manitowoc, Ludington, Benton Harbor, they noticed something unsettling, a triangle, the same one we've mentioned before. On June 23, 1950, Northwest Orient Airlines Flight 2501 vanished without a trace while flying over the lake en route to Detroit. There were 58 people on board. The plane had last been seen cruising steadily at 3,500 feet in calm weather, with no distress signal transmitted. Search teams later recovered scattered pieces of debris floating more than 20 miles offshore, but no wreckage was ever found. Not a single body was recovered, and the case has since become one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in the history of American civil aviation. Then, in 1998, a small private jet with 2 people on board, an experienced pilot and a single passenger, lost radar contact while flying through the very same area. The weather that day was officially recorded as perfect. The flight was supposed to take less than an hour, and yet it became another unexplained disappearance, one that echoed an all-too-familiar pattern. People have tried to explain it away, pointing to wind anomalies, sudden shifts in barometric pressure, atmospheric turbulence, or mechanical failure. But when events like these happen repeatedly, under the same conditions, in the same geographic zone, it becomes harder and harder to believe that nothing more is at play. Some amateur researchers have turned to sonar, scanning the lakebed in hopes of uncovering something, anything, that might offer an answer. But in the end, they've found nothing at all. The waves of Lake Michigan still lap against the shoreline, just as they have for hundreds, perhaps thousands of years. And for those who've lived near the lake, they know. This isn't just a vast body of water. From Le Griffon, the first ship to vanish, to the Roosevelt, found capsized in the fog with not a single soul recovered. From Captain George Donner, who stepped into a locked room and was never seen again, to Flight 2501, swallowed by the sky and erased without a trace. Could it all be coincidence? Could a few charts, some weather data, and a bit of logical reasoning truly explain it all away? Or are there forces at work that don't appear on any map, aren't printed in any textbook, but still move, silently, deep within the lake? If this story gave you pause, even for just a moment, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you'd like to continue exploring mysteries like this one, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. We'll see you in the next video.